I left the Do Not Disturb sign on my door and came back to find it hanging from the inside latch, still swaying. That was the most polite way anyone has ever told me I wasn't alone. I travel enough for work that hotels blur together, carpet that smells like old rain, ice machines with a nervous hum, wallpaper pretending not to peel. This one was older, 12 stories, a brick face with narrow windows and hallways that pinched you in. I'd asked for something quiet, and the clerk gave me the end room, 1208. The hall was cold enough to fog the peephole. I let myself in, dropped my bag, and did the mindless routine lock deadbolt. Flip swing latch, check the closet, always empty. Check the bathroom, tile still wet from whoever cleaned it with chlorine's ghost. I hung the Do Not Disturb sign on the outside knob on my way back out. My plan was simple. Quick dinner across the street, then emails, then sleep. 20 minutes, maybe 30. That's all I was gone. The keycard light blinked green. The handle gave with a soft metallic throat clear, and I pushed the door open. The first thing I saw was the sign on the inside hooked neatly over the swing latch. The cardboard, "Please do not disturb," facing me like a quiet command. It rocked once, twice, then settled. I froze in the doorframe, half in the hallway's cold, half in the room's stale warmth. The deadbolt was thrown. I don't lock the deadbolt from the outside, because you can't. The chain was hanging, unlatched, but the deadbolt on. My eyes stung. The air felt damp in my nose, like breathing through a towel. "Hello?" It left my mouth before I could stop it. My voice sounded padded. Silence. The room looked untouched. Bed tight as a drum. TV reflecting the yellow lamp. The narrow window showing a brick wall and the faint flicker of an empty alley. I stepped in, letting the door snick shut behind me. The hairs on my arms lifted as if the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. I did another check, slower. Closet. Nothing but the iron. Bathroom. Dry now, except for a smear on the mirror where someone's hand had dragged cleaner in an oval. My suitcase sat on the luggage rack with the zippers aligned where I leave them, except I don't align them. The desk chair had its back to the bed, pushed in with the neat finality of a staged photo. I hadn't done that. I called the front desk. The woman sounded friendly, but tired. "Housekeeping wouldn't have entered with a sign, sir. And the door logs show your key at 6:22 and again at 6:56. No other entries." I put the sign outside. "It's inside now." "Maybe you brought it in without thinking?" "I didn't." A beat. "Would you like to move rooms?" I looked around. The bed was too perfect. The sign stared up at me from the latch, polite and stupid. "No, I'll be fine." I should have taken the new room. I set little traps. If you travel long enough, you learn them. I placed a gum wrapper under the bed's front leg so it would stick out if the bed shifted. I balanced a plastic cup on the inside door handle. I wedged my bag so the zipper alignment was mine. I hung the sign back outside and snapped a picture of the door with the time in the corner. Because that's how my brain works when I'm embarrassed. Prove it later. I needed ice. I told myself that and went. The machine at the end of the hall stuttered like it was laughing. The hallway was brighter than my room, humming fluorescence, bathing the patterned carpet in antiseptic light. I counted my steps back 14 from the ice machine to my door and listened for anything beyond the blanket air. At step 8, the light under my door blinked, just a tiny fluttering as if someone had passed in front of it. I stopped so hard, the ice shifted in the bucket like bones. The cup was on the floor when I opened the door, rolling lazy circles by my foot. The Do Not Disturb sign was back on the inside latch. I didn't go more than 6 feet away. I didn't hear the lock. The TV now showed the hotel's default welcome screen, the one you get only when you've turned it on. I hadn't. I locked everything, the deadbolt, the swing latch. I dragged the desk chair, and angled it under the handle, a stupid wedge that would at least make noise. Anxiety makes you ceremonial. I picked up the sign and set it on the desk. Up close I noticed the crease was worn, like it had been hung and unhung a lot. There was a faint pencil smudge along the bottom edge. It looked like the arc a thumb makes when it clasps. I put my phone on the dresser, camera pointed at the door in a time-lapse. It felt like tying string across a trapdoor. The hotel phone rang. Front desk flashed on a little screen. I picked up. "Hello?" A man's voice, cheerful and thin through static. "Is everything to your liking up there in 1208? Someone's been in my room. We show no entries. But if you're uncomfortable, we can send security." My mouth was dry. "Yes. Stay in your room until he arrives." When the call clicked dead, I realized I had never told him my room number. As if the thought had cued it, there was a breath at the peephole. Not a draft, a real exhale, warm enough to pearl the glass for a heartbeat. My chest clenched so hard it hurt. The chair under the handle vibrated, a tiny quiver, as if a doorknob had tried a polite, testing turn. Knock, knock. Light, gentle. The knocks of someone who doesn't want to wake anyone but you. "Security," a voice said, the same thin cheer flattened by the wood. "Please open." I didn't. The phone rang again, the same display, the same ring. It felt like standing between two identical mirrors. I let it ring. The knocks stopped. The peephole held perfect darkness. The TV clicked off by itself. The room sank into the HVAC's breath and the faraway elevator bell. The chair under the handle made a dry, sliding sound, just a fraction, like someone testing its bite. I peeled the sign off the desk, and I don't know why, wrote on the blank back with the complimentary pen, "Who are you?" I hung it back outside on the knob and waited in the quiet, my ear inches from the door, the chair digging into my bicep as I held it steady. The minutes went elastic. No steps, no knocks. Just the building thinking its slow thoughts, and the slightest scuff. A fingernail on cardboard. The chair twitched. Something thin slid through the gap between door and carpet, just an edge of the sign, shivering like a fish's fin, and then the whole thing eased inside, slow and deliberate, as if it didn't want to make the sprinkler above the door blink with motion. It caught on the swing latch, hung there. On the back, under my question, a line answered in blocky, careful letters that looked almost like mine. "You were gone too long. Where did you go?" The letters pressed through the cardboard, hard enough to leave dents. I didn't wait for security. I packed with animal hands, scooping with my forearms. I took the stairs. My breath sounded huge in the stairwell because the carpet ate. Footsteps, but stairs don't. The clerk's eyes flicked to the clock as I slapped my key on the counter. "Everything okay, sir?" "Someone was in 1208. We didn't send anyone up." "I didn't say you did." Outside, the night hit me like clean water. I didn't care about the extra charge for early checkout. I booked another hotel 2 miles away and slept with the lights on. The desk chair under a door that didn't look trustworthy either. At the airport the next morning, security made me pull out my toiletry bag. I unzipped it with shaking fingers and found something wedged alongside the razor. It was the hotel's "Do Not Disturb" sign folded. On the bottom edge, where your thumb would rest when you carry it, the smudge had deepened into a dark, unmistakable stain, like oil from skin that hasn't seen fresh air in a while. On the back, there was one more neat line, impressed so hard it ghosted through. "Don't tell them. I like the inside." The tissue over my hotel room's peephole started to breathe. It rose and fell, softly, like a chest asleep inches from my eye. I'm a consultant, which is a fancy way of saying I sleep in different boxes every week. This was a conference hotel in a city I wanted to name because they asked me not to. An aging high-rise with humming ice machines and carpet that tried to hide old stains with darker patterns. The room was on the 9th floor corner unit, the kind you ask for when you want fewer neighbors. The hallway air was cold enough to bite the tip of my nose. Inside smelled like chlorine and old coffee. The peephole on my door didn't have one of those little privacy covers, just a brass ring around the lens. I noticed small scratches on the metal, like a watch band had worried it. I don't like the idea of anyone seeing into where I sleep, so out of habit I tore off a hotel tissue, folded it once, and pressed it over the peephole under a band of clear tape. Cheap fix. I know it sounds paranoid, but I've watched enough news stories about reversed lenses. I showered, ordered a sandwich, and spent the evening answering dull emails while the air conditioner clicked like a metronome. Sometime after 11, I turned off the lamp and stood to lock up for the night. That's when I saw it. The tissue, dead white against the door, was pulsing. Slow, steady. It would billow toward me, hold, then relax back flat. Each rise fogged a tiny damp crescent in the center, like a thumbprint that wasn't there a second before. I froze with my palm on the deadbolt. I wasn't breathing, not like that. I pressed my ear to the door. Through the wood came a soft, wet sound exhale, inhale, almost intimate, like someone trying not to be heard. There was a colder taste to the air at the crack near the latch, as if the hallway had reached into the room. "Hello?" I said low. The sound barely came back to me. The breathing stopped. A full beat of silence swelled. Then faint metal whispered against metal, tiny, exploratory. The tissue shivered as if touched from the other side. I took a step back. My phone camera shook in my hand as I started recording, zoomed in on the paper. I waited. 30 seconds later, the exhale started again, gentle as before, like the door itself had lungs. The round, damp spot bloomed darker. I called the front desk. The woman's voice was kind but remote, the way hotel staff talk after midnight. "Security will come up," she said. "Do not open for anyone unless they say the phrase blue key. That's our code. Is there a camera in this hall?" I asked. I was whispering without meaning to. "Yes, I'll check it while he's on his way. Please stay in your room." I set the phone against a water glass to keep recording and dragged the desk chair under the handle until the wood groaned. I switched on the bathroom light to throw a little extra brightness at the door. Every nerve in me felt like it was standing on its toes. 3 gentle taps. Not the knuckles you get from a drunk neighbor. These had a flat, careful rhythm. The tissue sank almost imperceptibly, then swelled again. "Front desk," a man whispered. "Open up, please. What's the code?" My voice cracked like dry wood. Silence. Then, too confidently, "Gold card." I didn't say anything. The breath returned, slower this time, like a laugh without sound. Something ticked against the inside of the brass ring. A delicate click. The tissue fluttered, and a tiny fleck of metal fell to the carpet, making no sound at all, but I saw it a minuscule screw, darker than the carpet because it was new. My stomach fell. Someone was manipulating the peephole from the hall. The inside piece is supposed to be unreachable without coming into the room. But I read about specialized tools, thin steel fingers that hook into the threads and twist from the hallway side. I stared at the tissue. It puffed again, stronger. The smell that seeped through was faintly sweet, like spearmint gum gone stale. My cell buzzed in my hand. "Front desk. Our guard is a minute away," the woman said. Her voice sounded closer, more awake. "We see someone outside your door right now on camera. But the feed just cut out. Don't open." "Someone's unscrewing my peephole," I said. "I'm staying on the line," she said. "He's on 9. Don't open." The tissue bulged once more and then went still, pressed like a held breath. A tiny rotational scrape trembled through the door. I reached up before I knew what I was doing and pressed my fingertip lightly to the paper. There was pressure back. It was the size and firmness of another fingertip, separated from mine by a millimeter of wood and a single-ply tissue. The corridor's fluorescent hum deepened, like someone had stepped under the light outside and made it complain. Footsteps arrived brisk, sure. A firm knock. "Security," a voice announced, loud enough to carry. Blue key. The tissue deflated, all at once, like the other person had stepped away. 30 long seconds passed. I peeled the tape, hands shaking, and let the tissue fall onto the desk. Through the peephole, the world was a fisheye smear, but I saw a uniform shape and a capped flashlight. I kept the chain on, opened the door 2 inches. The guard's face was real, tired, not cheerful. He held up his badge and kept his hands visible. He asked if I was okay. I told him what happened. He knelt, examined the peephole from my side with a small light, then from the hallway. "Looks clean," he said. If they were messing with it, they stopped. The front desk woman was beside him now, breathless from the stairs. She had a tablet and an embarrassed apology. "We lost the hallway feed for about 20 seconds, she said. "That never happens." I didn't sleep. The guard made a show of walking the corridor twice. I wedged my bag against the door, chair under the handle, and sat awake until a square of lighter gray edged into the room around the curtains. The air conditioner coughed. The city woke below like a machine restarting. In the morning, I checked out with a practiced smile and didn't mention the way my hands shook signing the bill. The manager comped the night anyway, for the inconvenience, and didn't meet my eyes. On the way to the elevator, I passed my door and glanced at the peephole out of reflex. The brass ring had a fresh fingerprint smudge on it, but not centered, dragged downward, as if someone had been holding on from the outside and lost their grip. I kept the tissue, crumpled in my pocket. On the plane, I unfolded it. That damp, oval stain had dried, outlining what looked disturbingly like the inside shape of someone's lips. In the middle of that oval, pressed so lightly, I only felt it with my thumb, was a neat indentation like a tooth. I threw it away in a bathroom trash can before my connection. I told myself it was all explainable. A draft, a prank, sleep deprivation. 2 weeks later, back in my apartment, a delivery driver buzzed my unit by mistake a little after midnight. I got up, annoyed, and reached for the chain. Habit took over. Without thinking, I tore a tissue from the box on the console table, stepped to my door, and pressed it gently over my peephole. It rose to meet me very slowly, with a warm breath from the other side. The elevator opened on a floor that wasn't on the panel. Just inside the only open door, my room number was printed on a key card, as if I'd already arrived. I travel enough to know hotel elevators have a personality. Some hum, some shudder, some hold you that extra second like they're thinking. This one, an older brass box in a downtown high-rise that pretended it wasn't tired, was the thinking kind. The button skipped from 12 to 14, number 13, the way superstitious buildings do. I had a corner room on 14. My bag was heavy from a late flight, and my brain was the soft, lidless kind of exhausted that makes everything feel a step behind. The elevator climbed, smooth at first. At 12, it sighed. The display flicked to 14, then back to 13 for a blink, like an eyelid twitching. The car stuttered as if it had been tapped from the outside. I felt it in my knees. The doors slid open onto a hallway that shouldn't have been there. Half the ceiling fixtures were dark, and the ones that worked hummed as if embarrassed. The light was the color of dishwater. The carpet had the same pattern as the real floors, but shrunken somehow, the repeating shapes not lining up with the walls. The air hit me with a stale cold, the kind that tastes like dust and old paper. On my right, maybe 20 feet down, a door stood ajar on its swing latch. The number plate was missing. Through the gap, I could see an entryway and a strip of thin carpet. Lying just inside on that carpet was a white hotel key card in a cardboard sleeve with the hotel logo. In ballpoint on the sleeve, someone had written 1422, my room number. "Hello," I said before my brain could catch up to my mouth. My voice felt too alive in the dead air. No answer. The elevator waited, patient as a held breath. The floor indicator above the doors didn't say 13. It didn't say 14 either. Between them, a hairline. 13. If you glanced, it looked like 13 and a half. I should have pressed close and gone to the real 14. Instead, I stuck my arm out to keep the doors from sliding shut and took one step onto the hallway's carpet, then another. It had that soft, bouncy give of underpadding that's been walked out over years. The quiet was so complete, I could hear the sound of the skin on my neck when I turned my head. I stopped at the threshold of the open room. The rectangle of space was a perfect copy of any entryway to any hotel room I've had, only narrower. The air inside was a shade colder than the hall. The key card lay on the floor like it had been slid with 2 fingers. The sleeve had a greasy thumb smudge on the corner. I crouched and picked it up. The card was warm. On the blank side of the sleeve in small, neat handwriting, curved in a way that made me think of a left-handed person, someone had written, "Welcome back." I don't know why I looked up then, but I did, into the slit of room beyond the latch. The darkness inside had that pressure to it, like a late storm sky. The bathroom light was on somewhere deeper, the kind of light that makes white towels look gray. I heard something faint the statusy click of an old TV changing channels very, very slowly. My phone had no service. The little LTE symbol just deflated. The elevator behind me sighed, that little motor whine that says it's about to make a decision without you. I slid the key card into my back pocket and stood up. A cold breath of air slid across my ankles, the way air does under doors. Except the source of it wasn't the hallway. It came from inside. Housekeeping? I tried, stupidly. I don't know why that was the word. From the darkness came one soft sound, so delicate I might have imagined it. The click of a key card knocking against a door handle if someone were pinching it loosely and thinking. The elevator doors, obeying whatever old logic they had, started to close. The thin line between them narrowed. Panic hit me hot and hollow. I lunged and hit the door open button with too much force. The doors paused and reluctantly slid back. I stepped backward into the elevator, leaning, not wanting to turn my back on the open room. The indicator blinked its hairline again. 13:14. The close button didn't work right away. It never does when you need it to. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then a shape passed across the far end of the hallway, just the suggestion of something too tall for the low ceiling. Not fast, not slow, an absence more than a body. The lights hummed harder like they were trying to decide whether to complain. The air felt thick, like being underwater with your throat closed. The doors finally slid toward each other, and I watched that narrow wedge of false hall get thinner until it was a strip, then a line, then a little black thread. As the last sliver of space closed, I saw a hand extend from the darkness of the open room. It didn't reach for the door. It reached for the space between, as if feeling for a seam. Metal met metal. The car lurched. The display gave up on its hairline compromise and simply said 14. When the doors opened again, it was on to the normal 14th floor hallway. Brighter, warmer, so aggressively clean-smelling it felt like a lie. People were laughing down by the vending machines. A TV murmured behind a door. Air with a life in it. My hands shook all the way to 1422. The unmarked card in my pocket was the same style as the one the front desk had given me at check-in. On a stupid impulse, I tried it on my lock. The green light blinked. The handle turned. The screen on the lock flashed a little welcome that I hadn't seen earlier. I stepped in like it might be a trap anyway. The room was mine bag where I left it, lines drawn, the hotel pen on the desk. But the bedspread had a crease across it that looked like someone had sat down. There was a second cardboard key sleeve on the nightstand I didn't remember, empty, with 1422 written on it in that same neat left-leaning hand. I called the front desk. "Did your elevator stop on a floor between 13 and 14? I asked. I described the hallway, the open door. "We don't have a 13th floor," the clerk said, her cheer held together by habit. "And if the car stalled, we would get an alert. We didn't. Someone wrote 'Welcome back' on a key sleeve in my room. That would be turned down service, sir." "You have turned down service?" "We do not." I hung up. I thought about going back down. I didn't. Instead, I slid the extra sleeve into my bag like a museum thief. I didn't sleep so much as keep my body horizontal until it was light enough to pretend last night had been an electrical problem. At checkout, the manager in a stiff suit thanked me for staying and asked too casually if everything had been satisfactory. I asked if they could print my keycard usage for the account. He blinked, then nodded, then printed. He passed me a thin strip of paper with times on it. One entry, 8:41 p.m., access granted, RM 1422. I had been in a rideshare across town at 8:41. "I have the receipt." I said nothing. The manager's eyes were on my face, like he was waiting for something. I folded the paper and put it in my wallet with the sleeve. On the street, the building's windows glared down like 100 mirrored eyes. I walked 2 blocks before I looked back. From this angle, I could see where the 14th floor corridor would run. There, halfway up, was a black line on the glass like a shadow where no shadow should be. Not a full floor, just a seam. 2 months later, different city, different conference. Different elevator with a scrubbed panel that also jumps from 12 to 14. When I pressed 14, the car paused. Very briefly. The display flickered the way a person's gaze flickers when they recognize someone. I keep walking into rooms now and finding empty sleeves on nightstands that say "Welcome back" in neat left-leaning handwriting. They always have my room number. Sometimes they're warm. The wake-up call came from my room. At 3:17 a.m., a cheerful voice chirped, "Time to go," and hung up before I could say a word. I don't set wake-up calls. My phone is more reliable, and I hate the idea of a stranger's voice breaking into my sleep. I was in room 317 of a business hotel off the interstate, the kind with a strip mall view and an atrium that smelled like coffee and chlorine. I'd driven 6 hours, answered emails until midnight, and fell asleep with the bedside lamp still on and the air conditioner rattling like old coins. The ring drilled through the room, bright, insistent, too clean. I jerked up, palm on the receiver before my brain found the clock. The bedside red digits read 3:17. "Hello?" I rasped. A man's voice, upbeat and weightless, came through like the automated wake-up voice, but slightly too pleased. "Good morning. Time to go." "Wait, what?" I didn't click. The dial tone that followed sounded thinner than any dial tone I'd ever heard, like it was farther away than the phone. I stared at the handset in my hand and listened to my heart trying to punch out of my throat. The air in the room had cooled while I slept. It carried that faint bite of overworked AC and bathroom cleaner. The lamp threw an egg yolk circle over the phone's faceplate. On the little LCD screen, where names and numbers appear, it said, "Outgoing call, 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. That made no sense. I called the front desk. The woman who answered sounded newly awake, but composed. "Front desk. How can I help you?" "Someone just gave me a wake-up call. I didn't set one." It was at 3:17. She paused. I could hear the low, endless lobby music under her voice. "One moment, let me check the log. We don't have any wake-up calls scheduled for your room tonight. Then who called me? Another pause, the tapping of keys. When she came back, her tone had shifted into professional confusion. Sir, it looks like your room placed an outgoing call to itself at 3 hours 16 minutes and 59 seconds. What does that mean? It shows your extension dialed, your extension. Softly, almost to herself. That isn't possible. We did the polite dance. She offered to send security or move me. Pride and sleep haze made me say I was fine. I hung up and sat in the lamplight, fully awake now, listening to the room breathe. The age unit ticked irregularly, metal expanding and contracting like an old animal's joints. Somewhere down the hall, an elevator dinged and then didn't open. I got up, checked the deadbolt and the swing latch both set. Peephole, black, and then a distorted fisheye hall. The carpet under my toes was cool and faintly tacky with humidity. I told myself it was a glitch with the phone system, a misdial, a crossed line. I turned off the lamp and lay back down and watched the digits crawl to 320. I had almost convinced myself when the message. Light blinked, a little red pinprick by the phone display. New voicemail. 1. The room felt smaller. I pressed playback and held the receiver to my ear like it might bite. A hiss, the sound of air being breathed by a machine. Then, faint, behind the hiss, the same cheerful voice, now slightly whispering, as if someone cupped the speaker. Time to go. Silence, except for a soft, unavoidable detail my brain didn't want to understand. The faint scrape of plastic on plastic, like a handset being lifted and replaced in an empty room. The message counter on the display ticked to 017 before it ended. I stabbed 0. The same woman at the desk picked up on the first ring. It just left a message, I said. Can you see where that came from? She didn't ask what it was. Keys clicked. The system shows another outgoing call from your extension to your extension. At 317 again. A shallow inhale. Sir, if you want to switch rooms, I can have a new key waiting. I said yes this time. Give me 5 minutes. I left the lamp on, flicked the bathroom light, so the doorway was a cold rectangle, and started throwing my clothes into my bag. The mirror over the desk reflected just enough of the bed to make the duvet look like a disturbed lake. The phone sat on the nightstand like a small, patient animal. I pulled the line from the back of the phone and left it draped on the tabletop, a hopeful, childish talisman. I slipped on my shoes, grabbed my wallet, and reached for the door. The phone rang. Not a recorded ring, not a cell buzz, its exact bell tone. Clean. And too bright for 324 AMA, warbling from a phone that wasn't physically connected to anything. The little LCD, still alive somehow, lit with the same message as before, only different. Outgoing call, 0 hours 0 minutes and 1 second. I couldn't make myself pick up. It rang twice more. On the third, it broke to voicemail, and without me pressing anything, the speaker clicked on and filled the room with my voice. Hello, my voice said. Sleep rough, confused, exactly a recording of me from less than 10 minutes ago. A stranger's little laugh behind it, barely there. Then that same cheerful man, like a game show host, leaning close. Time to go. The voicemail ended. The room listened to me. I listened to the room. I didn't bother with the peephole. I slid the chain off, yanked open the door, grabbed my bag, and stepped into the hallway's overbright fluorescence. The carpet swallowed my footfalls like it had a secret to keep. Down by the elevator, a plant in a brass pot made the air smell like watered dirt. I forced myself not to look back at my door. I pressed the call button with the flat of my hand. A door opened somewhere, the soft shush of a seal breaking. My skin prickled from scalp to heels. I steadied myself by watching the elevator numbers descend 6, 4, 3. The elevator dinged, doors sliding back to reveal an empty box and the faintest echo of lobby music. I stepped in and pressed L. The doors took their time. The back of my neck iced. As the doors were closing, the phone in my room rang again. I shouldn't have been able to hear it from the hall, much less the elevator. But the sound threaded the crack between the doors, thin and unmistakable, and the LCD above the elevator's doors flashed 317 in red for a single heartbeat before switching to L. The night clerk had my new key waiting, just like she promised. She looked up at me with that practiced composure, and when she saw my face, let it go. "We're sorry," she said quietly. "Maintenance will check the wiring in the morning." "Your system," I said, because I had to say it out loud to make it real, said my room called itself. She nodded minutely, like nodding any bigger would make it more true. It did. The new room was on a different floor, a different wing. I left the phone unplugged and the lamps on and watched the sky lighten through aluminum blinds. At 7, I checked out. The manager apologized, comped the night, and told me he'd never seen a PBX do that. He held a printout of the call log that I didn't ask for, but he showed me anyway, like he wanted to convince both of us. In a neat column, at 3 hours 17 minutes and 3 seconds, 3 hours 17 minutes and 17 seconds, and 3 hours 24 minutes and 51 seconds. Outgoing 317 gives 317 duration 017. I drove home on a highway that felt a size too big. I told myself it was all crossed wires, a glitch. I threw the key sleeve from 317 into my glove box like a scrap that would explain nothing if I ever looked at it again. That night, after exactly 17 minutes of lying in my own bed, my cell lit the ceiling with a rectangle of cold blue. Unknown caller. No number. Just the word unknown where a name should be. I let it ring until voicemail caught it. I didn't play it. At 3:17 a.m., the message light on my cell pulsed once and went still. The room was quiet enough to hear the blood in my ears. I turned the phone face down, closed my eyes, and tried to pretend the warm plastic didn't feel like a receiver. Somewhere in the apartment, a pipe ticked, shrugging off the chill. I still haven't listened. But sometimes, driving, I swear I hear my voice from a speaker I'm not holding say, bright and eager, time to go. I didn't write the warning tucked in the folded towel until later, when I did. By then, I'd already heard the bed breathe. I checked into a mid-tier hotel off the highway after dark, one of those places that all smell faintly like heated pool and burnt coffee. The lobby had fake plants and a bowl of mints no one touched. My room was 608, end of hall, past an ice machine that hummed like a nervous throat. Inside, the AC had been set to Arctic, and the first lungful of air tasted metallic, like cold coins. On the dresser, someone had staged a little still life, a folded towel like a swan that the swan had given up on, a plastic-wrapped cup, and a housekeeping slip with the hotel logo. Under special requests, in blue ballpoint, a message slanted across the paper. Please don't make the bed, they hide there. Below it was today's date underlined and a quick signature that made my stomach drop. The T's were slashed low. The R's looped like they were nervous about being R's. It looked like mine. Not similar mine. I didn't move for a long second. The room hummed and breathed around me. The bed was one of those high, white mounds with a dust ruffle that touches the floor like a curtain. The duvet had a shallow valley across it, like a body had been there recently, and the fabric hadn't gotten over it. I took out my wallet and found a receipt, looked at how I'd written today's date at lunch, then the note. The same left lean. I wrote a hide there on a pad with the hotel pen, all the letters behaving the way I know mine do when I'm tired. It matched. I hadn't put pen to that slip, but the shape of my hand was in it. I called the front desk. The clerk had that friendly weariness you only get from saying, "Of course," 1,000 times a night. I read the note to her and laughed in a way that didn't sound like me. Maybe housekeeping left a joke? "We don't do turn-down service," she said. I could hear the lobby fountain whispering, "Your room hasn't been serviced today? The log shows it clean since noon. Did you have the Do Not Disturb sign out?" "No." "And your lock shows only your key entry?" "No one else." "I can send someone up if you want." "To check the bed?" I meant it as a joke. It didn't land. "No, it's fine." After I hung up, I stood at the end of the bed and lifted the dust ruffle with 2 fingers. A smell slid out, warm fabric and something faintly sweet, like dryer sheets that had been kept shut up too long. The underside was a black box, the platform base, carpeted and hollow-sounding when I tapped it. There was a seam in the fabric where the 2 sides met factory, probably, but the stitches had been teased, not cut, as if fingers had worried them. The slit didn't look quite straight. I let the ruffle fall, and it brushed my knuckles like hair. I told myself I was being dramatic. I threw my suitcase on the luggage rack and did little rituals to make my brain feel like it controlled things. I set the chair leg against the door as a wedge, placed my keys in a line on the desk, stacked the extra pillows in the armchair like a barricade for no one. I laid the housekeeping slip face down on the dresser and snapped a picture of it. Because proof is a crutch, you don't know you're leaning on until it breaks. When I pulled back the duvet to get in, the fitted sheet let out a whisper, a long, papery exhale. It happens. Fabric does that. But I could have sworn I felt the air touch my shins, cool and purposeful, from below. I slept sideways across the bed without meaning to, on top of the covers with my shoes on. I woke around 1 to a sound like someone rubbing a thumb across canvas, small, repetitive, under me. The room was the gray-blue of late night. The A had clicked off, and the silence that followed was a presence. I reached out blind for the lamp and missed. My hand found the dust ruffle instead. It trembled against my skin, almost imperceptible, like someone behind a curtain had exhaled. I didn't yank it away. It wasn't bravery. It was the opposite. I eased my fingers beneath and held them there, inches above the carpet. A draft moved across them. Not from the vent, not from the door, from under the bed. I sat up and slammed the lamp switch. Light pushed back the gray. The bed was a dumb pile of rectangles. The dust ruffle hung still. On the knitstand, the housekeeping slip I'd left on the dresser sat neatly tucked beside the phone, folded once. My photo of it was still on my camera roll. I hadn't moved it. Inside the fold was a fresh line in the same blue. "Please don't lift the mattress." I wanted to leave. I did. My body didn't agree. It made the kind of small movements that looked like decisiveness from the outside. I got on my knees and pried up the corner of the fitted sheet anyway, because I had to see the thing I needed to pretend wasn't there. The mattress was heavy and reluctant. Beneath it, the platform's fabric belly rose with it, and then remained, just barely concave, as if something inside had learned to make itself flat. I slid my phone's light under the gap. The beam found staples, lint, one of those little silica gel packets that had been crushed into the carpet. The seam in the base wasn't quite shut. There were crescent impressions in the fabric, 3 in a row, the size of knuckles pressing outward and then relaxing. The light struck something white in the seam. A corner of paper tugged back as if it had been sucked in. I reached and felt the whisper of motion, like a mouth unclenching. My fingertip brushed paper and something cool and smooth that shifted away not with a scuttle but with a patient glide. The A sheet card, startling me into dropping the mattress. The bed took my weight like a held breath released. I set my ear against the top sheet. You shouldn't be able to hear inside a bed. It's all fabric and foam and wood. But there was a sound, so faint I thought it was my blood. It wasn't. It was like the rustle of someone turning a page in a quiet room. Then a short, almost polite tap from within the base 3 times. The same rhythm housekeeping uses when they don't want to scare you. Morning light made the room forgive everything, as it always does. The hallway smelled like chemically citrus and vacuum bags. I cracked my door and found the housekeeping cart 2 rooms down. A woman in a navy polo smiled at me in that guarded way of people prepared to have a stranger be either kind or not. "Could you skip 608 today?" I said. My voice came out hoarse. "Please don't make the bed." "Sure," she said, pencil hovering. "Any reason?" "They hide there," I said, before my brain could stop my mouth. Her eyebrows lifted, not amused, not afraid. "Filed under hay. The world is big." "No problem," she said, and drew a neat line through my room number. In my room, I found the towel swanless and flat on the dresser, like someone had smoothed it with careful hands. The housekeeping slip waited on top, blank. The pen lay beside it. I picked it up and wrote, in my handwriting, because it was my handwriting, because of course it was. "Please don't make the bed they hide there." I signed today's date. I folded it once and set it on the towel, exactly the way I'd found it. The act felt like stepping into a footprint that was already mine. I checked out at noon. The clerk's screen reflected in her glasses like a pair of smaller, cleaner eyes. "Everything okay with your stay?" she asked, because they have to. "Yes," I said, because I didn't want to explain the opposite. In the doorway, I hesitated and looked back up the dim blue ramp of hallway where 608 waited in its quiet. For a second, I thought I saw the dust ruffle stir in that room, a movement so small I might have invented it. I told myself I wouldn't think about it again. That night, in my apartment, the bed looked like a safe white island. I pulled back the corner of my fitted sheet anyway, laughing at myself in the smallest, meanest way a person can. Underneath, the box spring was sealed, no seam, no slit. I put my ear to it, just to prove something no one had asked me to prove. From deep inside, patient as breath behind a curtain, came the softest sound, the faint rub of a pencil on paper. The door took a breath. The chain lifted, settled, lifted again, and when I pressed my ear to the wood, my name came back to me in a whisper I recognized. I was in one of those aging conference hotels with long carpeted arteries for halls, and a pool you can smell but never find. The room was 621, end of the corridor, the kind of room I always asked for, because footsteps don't past your door at 2 a.m. It had a connecting door, a solid slab of painted wood set into the wall, with a deadbolt and a little chain latch on my side. I noticed it because the paint around the bolt was scuffed, like someone had tried the lock a lot. The air conditioner was set too cold and breathed in timed bursts. I did my usual routine: deadbolt the main door, throw the swing latch, check the bathroom, check the closet. I put my bag on the rack and sat on the bed to answer a few emails. The room had that hotel quiet full of machine sounds you stop hearing until you try to sleep. That's when I saw the chain on the connecting door move. Not a rattle, a rise. The chain lifted off its hook, a fraction of an inch, stretched forward until it was taut, then eased back, links clinking against the brass post with a delicate, wet metal sound. I stared and told myself it was pressure. HVAC makes doors flex, buildings breathe. It's a thing. I turned off the AC to prove it. The room's hum scaled down to a soft hatch ticking from the fridge and something faint in the wall. The chain rose again, held, lowered. In the dim lamplight, the metal looked alive. Fine. Drafts, I told myself. I'm not 12. I pulled a receipt from my wallet and taped it across the hairline seam where the connecting door met its frame. The paper bellied toward me and went flat again, like someone sighing on the other side. I called the front desk. Is anyone in 623? I asked. The clerk's keyboard made that patient clatter that says you re not the first to ask something strange tonight. We don't have a guest in 623, she said. That room is marked out of order pending maintenance. Would you like to move? Does it share a door with 621? A pause, then. Yes, sir. There's a connecting door there, but 623 is closed. No one should be accessing it. I'm fine, I lied, because the alternative was admitting I'd let a piece of metal spook me. Just if anyone comes up, don't let them into 623. Another pause, longer. We don't have a key issued for that room tonight. Call if you need anything. I set my phone to record and propped it on a glass pointed at the connecting door. I turned the AC back on because the silence felt like a held breath I was being dared to join. The chain rose, fell slow and regular. After the sixth rise, I pressed my palm flat to the wood. It was colder than the wall around it. When I lifted my hand, a rounder chill brushed my skin, like air moving past through a mouth-sized opening. I put my ear against the join where the bolt hit metal. For a second, I heard nothing. Then the wood vibrated just enough for my bones to notice, and a thread of sound unwound into the room. Hey! It wasn't a word from the hall. Not really. It was what a person's voice would be if the wall itself learned how to shape breath. Who's there? I said, which is a stupid question anywhere, but a hotel room at midnight. The whisper returned, closer to my ear, because there was nowhere else for it to go. Only this time, it didn't say anything generic. It said my name, not guessed, not mispronounced. It said it with the same lazy emphasis my mother used, the way my friends do when they call across a bar, the particular lie down their solutions of my syllables. It said my name like it had known it a long time. I took a step back so fast I kicked the bed frame. The chain yanked taut and hung humming. I stared at the filmed-over brass bolt on my side and the two black screws that held its plate. A thought arrived so simple, it felt foreign. That plate is new. The paint around it is old. Somebody put that latch on recently. Why? My phone's speaker clicked. The recording showed the chain lifting and falling. The audio was mostly room hiss, with a thin, sinuous line where the whisper should have been. When I scrubbed back, my own voice played a warped "Who's there?" like a stranger doing an impression of me from underwater. Front desk, the phone on the nightstand said, its red light blinking. I picked up. Sir? This is going to sound strange, the clerk said. Maintenance says 623 is sealed. It used to be an adjoining room, but that door was drywalled on the other side years ago. There isn't a handle in 623. There isn't a way to open it. What do you mean sealed? Behind your connecting door, there should be a wall. She lowered her voice as if the receiver could be overheard. Would you like us to move you? The chain rose without me touching it. The receipt paper puffed and went flat, puffed and went flat. That word sealed hung in the air and tasted like dust. Send someone up, I said. I'll meet them at my door. I took 3 steps toward the main door and stopped. The other door made a sound like a hinge bending without moving. The breath shifted from slow to something that matched something inside me. I realized it was sensing with my breathing. In as I breathed in, out as I breathed out. When I held my breath, it held. When I exhaled slowly, the chain eased forward, links counting my air. The whisper came again, softer, as if it had pressed its own mouth into the scene. Open, my name, it said, and I felt the shape of my name in the air more than I heard it. You always open. You always check. You always try. There is a point where fear tilts into a kind of numb. I reached for the chain because the reverse of a dare is also a dare. If this was stupid, it existed in the private category of stupid that only kills you on the news. My fingers touched the latch. The metal was too warm now, as if someone had been breathing on it for a long, long time. A knock at my main door knocked inside my chest. "Security," a voice said, friendly and firm. "You called?" I tore my hand away and opened the main door with the chain still on the other. The guard was real. Gray hair, a tired belt with practical things on it, skepticism borrowed from 100 strange nights. I told him everything I could stand to say out loud. He looked at the connecting door, at the taped receipt, at the way the chain lifted and released like a slow heartbeat. His eyes did a small human thing. He went next door to 623, while I watched the chain like a drowning person watches a shoreline. He came back frowning. "There's number 623 entrance," he said. "It's drywall. Utility closet access from the back service corridor only, and that's locked." He tapped the breathing door with his knuckle. "That isn't supposed to go anywhere." It answered him with a long exhale through the seam, soft enough to stir the hairs on his wrist. He flinched and looked at me in a way that said we were both going to pretend a thing wasn't happening. "Let's move you," he said. I packed like I was putting my hands into an animal's mouth and hoping it stayed asleep. In the new room, a different wing, there was no connecting door. I left the TV on and slept the way people sleep after almost stepping into traffic. At checkout, the manager apologized for maintenance noise, conked the night, and handed me his card like it could block a whisper. Back home, I shoved my suitcase into the closet and tried to forget. I unpacked the next morning because that's what sane people do, and I found the hotel notepad I'd thrown in there. On the top sheet, indented hard enough to emboss 3 pages down, were the shallow outlines of letters written with no ink, just pressure. A name, neat and practiced. Mine. As I read it, the thin bathroom door across the hall flexed on its hinge with no draft. The cheap chain on it lifted and settled, lifted and settled. In time with the breath I suddenly couldn't stop hearing. And from the narrow line where wood met frame came the smallest sound, warmed by a mouth pressed flat to a seam it had no business speaking through. My hotel key opened a door that wasn't mine, and the bed inside was still warm. On the TV, frozen on pause, was me entering my own room 2 floors above. I'd arrived late, the kind of travel late where everything feels a half-step soft. Check-in was a blur of laminate and apologies. My room was 1218, end of the hall. I dumped my bag, killed the AC's Arctic blast, and went to find ice and a snack. Coming back with a sweating bucket and a bag of pretzels, I rode the elevator, got off without thinking, and walked the length of the corridor by muscle memory. My keycard blinked green at 1218. The handle gave, and I pushed the door. The smell hit first warm fabric and shampoo, not the stale neutral of a room that's been shut. The air had a lived-in wetness, like someone had just stepped out of a shower. A dent sat in the near pillow, deep enough to hold the shape of a head. The TV across from the bed glowed black-blue, paused on a fisheye frame. I moved closer. The image was the hallway on the 12th floor, outside my door. Me, earlier, juggling my bag in the ice bucket, head down, swiping my key in 1218. The time stamp in the corner matched the time I had to the minute. I looked down at my brass door plate. My scalp prickled. I hadn't hit the 12th floor. The elevator had stopped at 10. Maybe somebody else got off, and I followed, or I was that tired. My key had still opened it. I called the front desk, because that's what you do when you need a simple explanation to walk into the room and take your fear by the hand. The clerk answered on the second ring, cheerful in that late shift way. I told her my key opened 1018, but your reservation is 1218, she said. I could hear her typing. 1018 is not occupied. I'm literally inside it, I said. The bed's warm. The TV is. I looked at the screen again. Playing your hallway camera. It shouldn't do that, she said. A sentence that never helps. I'm sending security. Please wait there. I put the phone down and, against every instinct, crossed the carpet. The TV sat on a low dresser. The remote lay at an angle, plastic still warm from a hand. The HDMI input said EV1 in the corner, not the hotel's menu. A black cable snaked behind the unit and disappeared through a small hole someone had drilled in the back of the dresser. Dust had been pushed aside recently in a clean oval. The paused frame unpaused by itself. Now the camera showed the hallway outside 1218 in real time. I could tell by the way the light banded across the carpet from the light at the far end slightly off from earlier. The door to my room, my actual room, was a dark rectangle. The image cut. Another angle blinked on, looking down at the bed in 1218 from high up in a corner, like from inside a smoke detector. My open suitcase on the luggage rack. The sort of quiet you can feel. The warm pillow at my elbow suddenly felt like someone had just lain there to watch that same feed. I moved away from the bed without meaning to, like my body had made the decision a second before I did. The TV cut back to the hall camera. The elevator at the end of the corridor slid open. A figure stepped out, hood up, hands in pockets. They moved without hurry. The camera gave me nothing for a face, just the idea of one. They stopped outside 1218, looked up once, that almost smile people get when they know where the camera is, and swiped a card. My card was in my palm. I looked down to make sure, as if the TV had any reason to lie to me about where plastic was. The figure opened my door, slipped inside, and let it close carefully without a click. "Hey," I heard myself say to the empty room. Like that does anything to a screen. The angle switched back to the bed in 1218. The figure was now inside my room, blurred at the edges by the cheap lens. They moved to my bag, unzipped it, and paused. They looked up at the camera again, direct, like meeting a glance through glass, and held it. Then they reached into their pocket and took out a white keycard sleeve and laid it on my pillow. The bedside phone in 1218 lit and went off hook by itself, line open, as if to let me listen to my own room breathe. I grabbed the remote, stupidly, like I could shout through it, then dropped it because the plastic felt too much like skin. I bolted into the hallway with the ice bucket rattling and took the stairs 2 at a time up to 12. On the landing, the air smelled like warm dust and metal, the particular tang of places no one means to be. I kept the phone pressed to my ear until it squawked that I'd left the call. Outside 1218, everything looked aggressively normal. The light under the door was a thin, neutral line. The hallway camera above me stared at me like a lazy eye. I swiped. Green. The lock chirped. Inside, the bed looked made. The dent I'd left earlier was gone, replaced by a single white sleeve on the nearest pillow. Hotel name printed in teal. In blue ballpoint, neat and small at the top. 1218. Below it, pressed so hard the letters dented the paper without actually taking ink, someone had written, "Wrong floor." The air in the room held the tail end of a breath worm, vanishing. A water ring sweated on the knitstand where no glass sat. My suitcase zipper was misaligned by half a tooth. I touched it, and a static tick jumped to my finger like a private joke. Security knocked 3 minutes later. He was winded and practical. A good combination for a stranger in your doorway at midnight, I told him. He walked with me down to 10, radio hissing at his shoulder. At 10:18, my key blinked red. He frowned and used his master. When the door opened, the room was cool. The bed was crisp, the pillow smooth as paper. The TV was on the hotel menu. The dresser's drilled hole was there, but whatever cables had crusted it, and the dust patterns were gone, like a mouth wiped clean. We stood in the ASEUM while he said the thing people say when they re-not calling you a liar. "We'll pull the logs." He escorted me back to 12. The clerk on the phone sounded smaller now. "The system shows your key authenticated at 10:18 minutes ago," she said. "But 10:18 hasn't been assigned for 6 months." "I'm not trying to get a free night," I said, and my voice made it sound like I was. They moved me to a different floor, different wing, a room that smelled like carpet cleaner and apology. I kept every light on and let dawn find me rather than sleep do it first. In the morning, the manager printed the key activity because I asked him to. One line in a column that made no sense. 2341, P1218 access granted, RM 1018. At the airport, I shoved everything into my carry-on with that get-me-home energy and didn't think. It wasn't until I emptied my bag on my bed at home that a small white rectangle fell out. A hotel key sleeve, the same teal logo. 1018 written at the top in the same small, neat hand. Inside, it was a micro SD card. No label. It's still on my dresser in a glass, like a trapped wasp. I haven't put it in anything. I tell myself I don't want to know what else that TV in 1018 could see. I tell myself it's nothing. I tell myself when I'm tired, my hands open doors without me. Last week, in another city, another hotel that pretended to be the first in different colors, the elevator doors parted on my floor. I walked to what I knew was my room by feel. My key blinked green. The brass plate said 901. I don't make that mistake anymore. But sometimes I do hold the card over a stranger's lock, just long enough to feel the static lift the hairs on my wrist. Sometimes I swear the reader warms, like a breath waiting on the other side. The suitcase in my hotel closet had my name on the tag and tomorrow's checkout date. Inside was a hotel robe and a glossy photo of my door, taken from the hallway an hour before I arrived. I checked in just after 9, road-tired and craving quiet. The hotel was one of those anonymous downtown stacks carpet that tries to look expensive. A lobby waterfall, pretending to be tranquil over the chlorine. My room was 814, end of hall. The air inside was overcooled and metallic, the kind of cold that bites the back of your nose. I tossed my duffel on the luggage rack and opened the closet to hang my jacket. A black hard-shell spinner sat there, snug against the wall like a pet that knows where it belongs. It wasn't mine. A leather tag dangled from the handle with my full name printed clearly on a white card middle initial and all. Tucked behind it was one of the hotel's cardboard sleeves labeled baggage, with tomorrow is date scrawled next to checkout in blue pen. For a second, my brain did the thing where it flips through easy explanations. Housekeeping mixed up deliveries. Another guest with my name. Some new concierge service that anticipates your needs without asking. I rolled it out onto the carpet. The handle felt warm. The zipper tabs were aligned and secured with one of those tiny hotel-provided locks you can open with a fingernail. I slid it free and pulled. The shell opened with a damp sigh of sachet and laundry steam. Inside was a single white robe, folded into thirds, belt tied in a flat, practiced knot. The hotel's name was monogrammed in pale thread over the chest. The terry cloth looked fresher than anything else in the room, sun-bleached, white with that faint scent of heated cotton that clings to things that come straight from an industrial dryer. Laid on top of the robe, in a plastic sleeve, was a 4x6 photograph. My door. The angle was down the hall and to the right. You could see the edge of the ice machine in the background, the scuffed skirting by the baseboard, the little green light above the peephole. The time stamp in the corner read 8:07 p.m., 50 minutes before I'd swiped my key. I flipped the photo over. Blank. No message. No clever welcome. Just the gloss, the paper, and the suggestion of a thumbprint near the top where someone had pressed harder than necessary. I called the front desk. The clerk sounded young and too cheerful to have heard the kind of things people tell front desks. I explained. A suitcase in my closet, my name on the tag, a photo that shouldn't exist. "Let me see if anything was delivered while the room was vacant," she said. I could hear lobby noise wheels on tile, someone's laugh that didn't reach where I was. She came back after a pause. "We don't have a pre-arrival delivery for your reservation. No one has checked into your room today, except you. Would you like me to send security? Does anyone else with my name have a reservation?" "No, sir." "Then how is there a bag in my closet with my name on it?" Another pause that stretched. "I'll send someone up." While I waited, I pulled the robe out because I couldn't not. It was heavier than it looked. The belt was knotted in the middle, and this is going to sound ridiculous. The knot felt learned. Not tied once, but tied the same way 100 times. When I shook it free, the belt left 2 shallow dents in the pile, like it had been cinched around a waist and then folded. I checked the photo again. The more I looked, the more that angle bothered me. It wasn't a phone picture. It had the crispness of a lens that doesn't belong in a pocket. You can tell when someone uses a tripod, even if you don't know you can tell. There was a slight parallax at the edge, like the camera had been close to the wall tucked behind that decorative pillar by the ice machine, maybe, watching the door. A knock. "Security," a voice said. I opened up for a man with a tired belt and a kind face. He listened without interrupting, looked at the suitcase, looked at the tag. "That your name?" he asked, not quite meeting my eyes. "Yes. Mind if I take this down?" "We'll check the log near the bell station." I handed him the tag so he could see the guest information card behind it. He pinched it to slide out and frowned. The handwriting, if you could call it that, was blocky, neat, almost printed. It was mine. Not similar, mine. The same flat-topped A's, the same too long crossbar on the T. Tomorrow's date was written the way I always mess it up. The one with too much serif. The 7 with a slash. He carried the case out like it weighed more than a robe. The hall swallowed the sound of the wheels. I sat on the bed and stared at the closet where the dark square of carpet was still flattened by the suitcase's feet. The room had the kind of quiet that amplifies the smallest things, the crackle of the AC cycling, a distant elevator bell, the rasp of my own sleeve when I moved. I told myself what I always tell myself in the middle of something I'd rather not be living through. You will have a dumb story about this later. You will say, "They put somebody else's bag in my closet," and people will nod and add their own. My phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "We'll collect at checkout. Robes for tonight." There was a smiling face that wasn't quite any platform's default. I stared until the letters went soft. When I scrolled up, there was nothing. No thread. No number to block. I went to the Peephole. The hallway looked like a stage set between shows. The ice machine hummed. A stripe of light from a door down the way through a perfect bar on the carpet. There was a faint smell of damp luggage, the kind that clings to wheels and fabric after rain. I decided to go downstairs. People help when they can see your fear. I grabbed my wallet and reached for the knob. Something slid under my door. A whisper of cardboard across carpet. A white envelope. The kind the hotel uses for express checkout. Inside was my folio zeroed because I had just arrived and a second glossy photo. This one was tighter, closer. My door from the same angle, but now the little green light above the peephole was on. You can only make it do that from inside the room by turning the handle. The timestamp said 9:22 p.m. My stomach went cold. I had been on the phone with the front desk at 9:22. I opened the door. The hall was empty, except for a housekeeping cart, parked too neatly by the far stairwell. A robe belt trailed from under a top shelf like a tongue. The elevator hissed open, and the security guy stepped out pushing the black suitcase. His face had lost the part of him that tried to be reassuring. "No log?" he said without preamble. No bellman touched it. No baggage tag scanned. The cameras at the service elevator are down. He didn't like that last word. He set the case down and, with a nod I didn't understand until later, left it just inside my room, as if putting it back where it wanted to be would make a thing unhappen. I didn't sleep much. I put the robe in the bathroom, then took it out, then set it ringed around the lamp base like a white snake, because superstition demands idiosyncratic strategies. Every time the AC cycled, the belt end stirred against the lampshade. Around 2, I drifted. At 6:58 a.m., the alarm I hadn't set went off on the TV. A soft, polite chime. "Good morning," the hotel's default voice said. "Express checkout is available." My phone buzzed again. No number. One line. "Lobby, 11 o'clock. I packed with my heart in my mouth. When I zipped my duffel, a third photo laid itself bare at the bottom, like it had melted out of the lining. My door. Again, but the angle higher, now almost above my head. The timestamp said 10:59 a.m. I checked out at 10:40. The clerk didn't ask how my stay was, and I didn't volunteer anything useful. The black suitcase was nowhere visible in the lobby. Home that night, I hauled my duffel into my apartment and flipped on the hall light. My building has a narrow corridor that funnels sound. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog sneezed. I went to hang my jacket. There, on the floor of my closet, sat a black hard-shell spinner. No dust, no scuffs. A leather tag with my full name. A cardboard sleeve that said "Checkout. Tomorrow." The knot on the belt of the robe inside was the same flat, practiced knot. Tucked under the belt was a photograph. My apartment door. Shot from down the hall. The peephole light was on. The timestamp in the corner was 10:59, Amintoro. They'd made it very easy for me. All I have to do is be here when they come to collect. He showed up behind me in the elevator, only in the mirror. When the doors opened on my floor, the reflected version of him stepped out beside me, and the empty hallway suddenly felt crowded. I was staying in one of those downtown business hotels with brushed, metal everything and the smell of citrus cleaner ground into the carpet. It was late. The lobby piano had stopped pretending to be alive, and the only sound was the hum of the elevators and the distant gargle of the ice machine. I got in alone and pressed 18. The elevator's mirror panel was a big, polite untruth that turned the box into a silver throat. About halfway up, on the 12, the car shivered. The cable sang once one note, low and old. I looked up at the floor indicator and then down at my phone. In the mirror, I saw myself do it, and a half step behind my reflection, a man-shoulder, the slope of a head, the black suggestion of a suit. I turned around. Empty stainless steel wall. A scratch at hip level, like someone had tried to carve time into it. The same faint citrus bite, the same elevator breath. I looked back at the mirror. He was there again, exactly where he'd been, a half beat late, as if he were attached to my reflection by a loose string. He was taller than me. No face, not because it wasn't there, but because glare took it, the way light sometimes eats details. My tongue felt thick. "Can I help you?" It sounded ridiculous inside a box that contained only me and my heartbeat. The car stopped on 18 with a soft, old sigh. The doors parted. In the mirror, I watched myself step out, watched the man in the mirror step out with me from the mirrored car that shouldn't have been there. Our three shadows sliding across the polished threshold. In the real hallway, I was alone, carpet muffling everything, but my skin pulled tight the way you feel when someone walks too close behind in a crowd. I told myself something reasonable and thin glare, fatigue, the way your eyes create echoes when they're tired. I walked toward my room, the long runner swallowing my steps. Every few feet, a glass-sheathed wall sconce threw a small patch of reflection. In those little oval mirrors, there he was, a sliver of dark behind me, always within an arm's reach in the glass, absent in the air. He moved with my speed, but not quite with my rhythm. If I stopped, he took one last step, then stilled. My hand shook enough that the key card flashed red twice at 1811. The third time, it beeped green. The bulb above the peephole winked. I stood there, looking at the brushed metal door, like the answer might be there if the light hit it right. In the little convex mirror of the peephole, a fisheye of the hall hung in a fuzzy stripe of dark behind me that wasn't me. "Okay," I said to no one. The words steamed the air and went away. Inside, I set my bag down, clicked the deadbolt and the swing latch, and put my back to the door. The TV blacked out my shape. In it, over my shoulder, the man in the mirror leaned, as if angling his head to better see into a room he wasn't in. I turned. No one. When I looked back at the TV, he was nearer, the glitch gap tightening. Dark jacket, a line where a tie would be. His hands stayed low, off frame in the reflections, which made me angrier than it should have. I grabbed the remote, turned on the news for noise. The room bloomed with strangers' voices. In the TV glass, he backed away, as reflexive as smoke, just far enough that he seemed to pool around the edges rather than stand. I called the front desk. "Does your elevator mirror?" I started, and then realized I sounded wild. "Is something wrong with your room, sir?" The woman sounded awake but distant, like she had a hand over the receiver and was staring at something else. "We've had reports of a flicker on the 18th floor car." The mirror showed a man behind me, I said. There wasn't one in the car. "A beat. Would you like to change rooms?" I said yes without meaning to. She told me they'd re-key me to 1904 if I came down. I hung up and started packing my small, absurd pile of stuff. That's when the bathroom light flicked itself on. Not a full click, just a pulse, the fan spinning a quarter turn and coughing out damp air. In the bathroom mirror, he stood in the doorway behind me. My pulse hit the backs of my eyes. The sink soundlessly dripped in the reflection, a water that didn't exist. I reached up and, like someone sleepwalking, dragged the edge of a hand towel across the mirror to fog it with my breath. Words appeared in the clearing as the fog receded, not written on the glass, but in the way it refused to fog in the shape of letters, left over from a hand that had been there when steam found it last. 3 simple words, printed by a finger. "You got out." The floor swayed under me, not the building me. The idea arrived as unwelcome and neat as a spool of thread rolling to your foot. He had not. He rode the elevator all the way up in the mirror, and he took the step I took when the doors opened. Just because I couldn't see him didn't mean he wasn't matching me in every polished surface. I left. I did it fast and with the little kid logic that speed outruns shadows. I glanced at nothing, because anything would have reflected back wrong. At the elevator, I pressed down and kept my eyes on the carpet pattern until the door slid. He was in the elevator before I was. Not in the metal, no reflection on the steel, cold and honest, but in the mirror that made the car look bigger than it was. He stood very close behind my reflection, closer than anyone would stand by choice. The mirror made my mouth a thin line. His not mouth hovered where an ear would be. The doors closed. The car dropped. He leaned forward in the glass until the place where a mouth could be was near the place where my neck showed a slice of skin, above my jacket. I felt nothing but a temperature change, a small ring of cold like a coin pressed to my spine. My reflection's breath left my chest and clouded the mirror for a heartbeat, but the area where his not face hovered stayed clear, a hole in the fog. At the lobby, the doors opened, and the mirror world opened too. He stepped out with my reflection, and the polished marble of the floor threw a version of both of us up like a weak ghost. My real solace squeaked. His didn't. He walked off to the right in every reflective surface, the brass of the bell stand, the dark glass of the window tracking my angle, hunting the overlap. The night clerk saw me cross to the desk with whatever was on my face. She slid my new key across without small talk. Her eyes flicked to the big framed mirror behind me, then away, as if by not acknowledging it, she could keep the room flat. 19th floor, she said. No mirrored elevator on that bank. I turned toward the alternate elevator corridor, the one lined with matte-painted walls and framed prints with non-glare glass that still reflected a little if you stood just so. In each pane, he kept pace, a crease of dark that never got resolved. In the last one before the corner, he stopped. I watched him in the smear as I rounded out of the reflective field. For a second only, that there was no version of me to anchor him. He lifted one hand and pressed it flat to the inside of the glass. The other side of that glass was air. But the print bloomed and stayed as if oil from a real palm had touched it. By the time I slept, it was gray daylight. I checked out at noon. The manager smiled too much and talked about a scheduled upgrade to the elevator interiors. In the revolving door, I caught myself in the curved glass, and in the quarter turn of shine I saw him, a dark second, keeping the pace, stepping when I stepped. At home now, I keep the bathroom mirror wiped bone dry and hang a towel over the hallway frame. It doesn't matter. Windows are mirrors at night. Phone screens are mirrors until they light. Every time I pass one, a half beat behind the man I'm supposed to be, he keeps walking. I don't take elevators alone anymore. It isn't the box I'm afraid of. It's what steps out with me when the doors open and only the mirrors tell the truth. The phone said to stay in my room. The bathroom said at too sane cheerful cadence, a half-second late, like a mouth against the vent learning how to speak. I was in one of those older downtown hotels that tried to hide their age with citrus cleaner and new carpet patterns. The elevator shuddered a little between floors. The hall lights hummed. My room 1114 smelled faintly of steam and chlorine, like the pool level was thinking up through the vents. I locked the deadbolt, dropped my bag, and sat on the corner of the bed to peel off the day. The landline rang. That bright, plasticky ring hotels still use, even though no one needs it. I picked up on the first sound just to make it stop. Front desk, a man's voice said, cheerful like an airline pilot. Please stay in your room until security arrives. What why? I asked. I could feel the air change as I uprighted. Maintenance issue on your floor, he said, same cheer. Security's on his way. Please stay in your room. I said, okay, because that's what you say when a calm voice assigns you a role. The line clicked. As I lowered the receiver, the bathroom repeated him not through the phone, but from the ceiling, thin and paper dry. Please stay in your room until security arrives. The same words, same tone, like a recording played through a cheap radio 3 feet from the shower. I stood up so fast, I bumped my shin against the bed frame. The bathroom door was open. Inside was tile a mirror that made my face look a shade more. Bloodless a vent above the toilet with a dusty grill and a circular yellowed plate in the ceiling where a speaker used to be if there ever had been one. These old rooms sometimes had audio piped from the TV. I've seen those setups. I checked the TV muted. The little switch by the vanity labeled bathroom audio was in the off position. I flicked it on then off. Nothing changed. My phone buzzed an email I didn't care about. I called the front desk back on my cell because I needed the voice to take responsibility for what the room had just done. Front desk, a woman this time, professional and kind. A minute ago a man called and told me to stay in my room, I said. He said security was on the way. The bathroom repeated him. That call came from us, she said. We're just asking guests to remain in rooms briefly. Do you have an intercom in the bathrooms? No, sir. A pause, a keyboard. We removed the bathroom speaker system last year. They shouldn't function at all. Something just repeated you in here. Another pause. Security is on his way to your door now. Please don't open unless he gives the code blue key. Blue key, I repeated, because you repeat the things that are supposed to save you. In the bathroom, soft as a page turning, the same 2 words rolled back. Blue key. I put the receiver down and listened. The vent exhaled nothing. The quiet deepened until I could hear my own mouth. The knock came like someone tapping a cup with a fingernail. 3 short raps on my main door. Security, a man called. Blue key. From the bathroom ceiling, a breathy echo. Security. Blue key. Same cadence, a half-second late. I went to the peephole. The hallway bent light into a fisheye corridor. No one stood in front of my door. Far down by the ice machine, a plant shivered in the air from the AC. The little green light above my handle glowed like it always does when you stare at it too long and see ghosts in plastic. The knocks came again, like a patient person not wanting to wake other rooms. The vent at my back clicked as something metal behind the grill cooled. Front desk, the landline said, its red light blinking as if embarrassed. I picked up, the same cheerful male voice. Security is outside your door. I don't see anyone. Another click. The bathroom repeated, crisp as a parrot. Security is outside your door. I can hear that, I said, stupidly, to both. The room had started to feel like being inside a person's mouth, the way sound curves and sticks and returns. Do not attempt to open, the woman at the actual front desk said in my ear through my cell, startling me. I hadn't hung up. Our guard is still on the elevator. Please stay in your room. What you're hearing is, sir, just stay inside. Then who I began, and the bathroom outlined my question in a whisper that matched me too closely. Then who? Everything in me wanted to throw the chain, throw the bolt, throw myself into bed like an ocean creature, burying itself in sand. Instead, I laid the hotel pen under the door, so the tip poked the hall. A little telltale. If someone walked by, it would shift. It lay there blue and dumb. I put my ear to the door. Wood always smells like old water up close. The air seeping through the seal tasted like hallway. Perfume, carpet glue, a faint metallic cool. The bathroom speaker, if that's what it was, spoke again. Almost conversational now. Please stay in your room, it said. Then, a beat later, with my name on the end like a hand on a shoulder. I hadn't told anyone my name. Not out loud, not to the room. Sir, the woman on my cell said, what's your name? Like she'd walked into the conversation at a bad moment. There was a long, quiet minute where all the machines took turns breathing. I grabbed my suitcase, because that's what we do when animals in us know we might have to run in shoes. The knock came again polite, still on rhythm. This time, the handle turned softly against the deadbolt. A love tap to the metal. The chain stayed slack. Whoever was outside, or whatever was pretending to be outside, didn't jolt it. It was an intelligent little test. Front desk, the landline said for the 3rd time. We need you to open. The voice was wrong now. Too bright, smooth where humans have burrs. The bathroom repeated it with the same missing grit. We need you to open. My cell crackled. The woman's breath crowded the microphone. Sir, no one is at your door. Do not open. I walked the 3 steps to the bathroom and looked up into the vent. Dust furred the grid like gray eyelashes. Up in the dark was a glint, a tiny green star where no star should be. I dragged the desk chair in, climbed, and put my hand close. Warmth breathed against my skin from the black behind the grill, a mouth of air severe enough to flutter the hair on the back of my fingers. Don't, the woman said, and I didn't know if she meant the vent or the door. The vent said it too. Don't. I flicked my phone's flashlight and aimed it through the slats. White terry cloth, as if a towel had been stuffed up into a cavity. Behind the cloth, wires. And behind the wires, something round and plastic with a pinhole and that green light sheep consumer like the eye of a baby monitor. I took one screw out with my keys before something on the other side of the grill pushed back. Not hard, just enough to set the chair trembling under my feet. Enough to make the towel bow outward as if to taste the room. The door handle turned again. The chain ticked. In the space between the second and third knock, both phones' landline and my cell spoke in the same breath, same pitch, both voices fused, a stereo of instruction arranged around my name. Please open now. My pen skittered on the floor as the air pressure under the door changed. The crack at the threshold inhaled. The peephole filmed over for an instant, like someone's eye had been too close on the other side and fogged it. Blue key, the bathroom whispered, almost amused, as if the word had been a toy, and it had learned where to drop it for effect. I didn't open. I couldn't make anything in me open. They moved me later. Security walked me down the hall like I was being escorted out of my own fear. The guard looked up into the corners as we passed, as if corners might answer him. The manager apologized in the morning with tea and a printout of call logs that said my room. Phone had dialed the front desk at the exact second it rang. At home, my apartment is new enough that the bathroom fan doesn't rattle. The first night back, it clicked on by itself at 3:12 and sounded exactly like a cheap speaker behind a grate. Front desk, it said, cheerful and almost warm. Please stay in your room until security arrives. Then it said my name. And behind my door, something tested the air like a hand. My bug detector was silent until I killed the lights. Then a pair of soft red dots woke up in the ceiling fire alarm and followed me across the room like eyes. I keep a cheap hidden camera detector in my carry-on $1.20 plastic thing with a squeal knob and a little red viewfinder. I bought it after a run of Airbnbs and hotel incidents in the news. 90% of the time it sings at Wi-Fi routers and mini fridges and makes me feel like an idiot. This hotel was a business tower with the usual lobby waterfall and lemon cleaner smell. I checked into 917, tossed my duffel on the rack, and did the ritual. Deadbolt, latch, closet, under bed. The room breathed cold through an overworked HVAC. The curtains were the thick kind that pretend to be blackout. I swept the detector to humor myself. No RF pulse, no angry beeps. Through the viewfinder's red glass, lenses flashed back like animal eyes. All I saw were lamp bulbs and my own anxious face. The ceiling had the standard sprinkler, a smoke alarm, and a yellowed speaker plate no one had removed. Harmless. I answered emails until my head felt loose, brushed my teeth, and hit the switch by the door. The room fell into that syrupy hotel dark that turns everything into rectangles. On a stupid impulse, before I climbed into bed, I raised the detector to my eye and scanned the ceiling. 2 red dots bloomed inside the smoke alarm's face, faint, ember soft. They weren't there with the light on. In the dark, they were. I stood very still. The dots widened a fraction, then narrowed. As I took a step to the left, they slid within the ring like pupils tracking. Okay, I said to no one, because hearing your voice makes the thing in front of you more likely to be physics. I stepped right. The dots drifted right. I lifted the detector to see if the lens reflection trick was fooling me. Through the red filter, the smoke alarm looked like a jellyfish, a circle with a brighter core. The dots were not a reflection. They were LEDs behind the plastic, waking for low light and God pivoting. I grabbed my phone and flipped to the front camera. Most phones will show 850 nanometers infrared as a dim purple. I pointed up. The screen filled with a faint halo around the alarm and 2 hot points, brighter than stars. As I moved the phone slowly, the hot points tracked, jittering like a cheap gimbal trying to be smooth. Somewhere above the drywall, a tiny servo whined to match me. My scalp went ice cold. I turned the light back on. The dots died. The sound stopped. I turned it off. They woke. I called the front desk. because sanity wants to be told to shush. "Hi," I said, sounding like the guy you stopped listening to. "Is there a camera in my smoke alarm?" "We do not install cameras in life safety devices," the woman said, trained to make that sentence land as fact. "That would be illegal." "Is your smoke alarm blinking a red light?" "They do that to indicate power. In the dark, it's 2 red dots, and they follow me." A pause, like someone covering a receiver to look at someone else. "I can send security up." While I waited, the room felt like a mouth thinking around me. I stood under the sprinkler head and swept the detector. No chirp. I pointed it at the vent. Nothing. I pointed it back at the alarm, and the cheap circuit howled a little, not RF, more like it caught a whisper of something switching. As if on cue, the alarm's dots shifted, a half-inch within the ring. They weren't looking at the detector. They were looking at my face. I took a towel off the rack, and standing on the bed, reached up. "Don't," I told myself in someone else's voice. I draped the towel over the alarm anyway. 2 seconds later, the room phone rang a too bright trill inside a swallowed space. "Please do not obstruct detectors," a different woman said, polite with an edge. "We received an alert from 917. There's a camera in it." "Sir, that would be illegal." "It is illegal," I said. The towel on the ceiling twitched. Not from air, from under it. The dots, now dimmed by Terry, walked the fabric like something examining a pocket from the inside. The hallway knock was a practice triple, firm, friendly. "Security. What's the code?" I asked through the door. He said a phrase I won't repeat. It was correct. I opened. The guard was a heavyset man in his 50s, with a radio that hissed and tired eyes that had seen nonsense weaponized. He stepped into 917 and glanced up. I flicked off the light. We both saw it, the soft twin embers in the ceiling ring, sliding to center on him as he moved. The sound of something small trying to be quiet. He said nothing for a moment. Then, with the tone of a person who's been told what lines to use when nothing applies, he said, "I'll get engineering." He left. I turned the light on and off 3 more times like a lunatic, and the dots obeyed, awake, asleep. When they were awake, the detector warbled low. My phone showed not just 2 hot points now, but a second halo above the vent, like something else waking up back there. I scanned the room. The digital clock's face had a tiny extra glint. The TV's black bezel returned 2 more dots for a breath. Then nothing, like something behind glass, had blinked. Engineering arrived with a man in a polo that said maintenance. He had a ladder and that squint of someone ready to be irritated. He turned on the light, climbed up, and twisted the alarm's face. The dots were gone in the brightness. He showed me the guts. A disc with dust, a battery pack, a date stamp. No camera, no wires that didn't belong. He returned it to the ceiling, satisfied at the thing he could prove. "See?" he said. I turned off the light. The red dots lit. He froze on the ladder. The dots slid until they found his eyes. I heard a tiny motor take a breath. He looked at me, and I saw in his face the moment his night got longer. "We'll move you," he said, already climbing down. I slept 2 floors down with the bathroom light on and a towel over that room's smoke alarm anyway. In the morning, the manager was a white smile and a card and an offer to comp. He said they'd audit devices, a phrase that sounded like dressing a wound with corporate gauze. He slid me a printed note with their legal policy about privacy. I slid it back. I wanted the story to end there, with me changed and the building unchanged. Back home, I set the detector in a drawer and told myself to be less of who I am. 2 nights later, I woke to a sound like a tiny insect inside a plastic shell. I lay in the dark of my apartment and watched the ceiling. Very faint, a ring of warm gray announced itself around my smoke detector. Then, within the ring, 2 red dots woke like tired eyes. I turned on the lamp. Gone. I turned it off. They were there, They slid to find me. I pulled the battery because that's what you do. You make it stop. The detector kept breathing, power from somewhere else. My phone camera showed the dots brighter than before, and in the reflection of the black TV screen, more dots pairs across the room, briefly awake in the glow on glass like other faces peering in from a darker hallway. I sleep now with the lights on, as if that helps. The cheap detector is back in my bag. It stays quiet until the room thinks I've forgotten it. And when I test myself and switch everything off, the ceiling looks back, polite and patient, and follows me wherever I go. The window was a sheet of glass pressed a hand's width from a brick wall. Still, something kept sliding past on the other side, and it only moved when I didn't look. I checked into the hotel at the end of a long, gray day, the kind of winter afternoon that never quite becomes night, just deepens into it. The lobby smelled like lemons and damp wool. My room was 703. When I drew the curtains, my shoulders sank. The window didn't look out so much as inward. A red brick wall stood there less than a foot away, mortar lines thick as veins. No view, no sky. Just a sliver of darkness where the two buildings almost kissed. The glass was cold against my knuckles. The gap made its own weather, a faint, steady draft that smelled like wet stone. From somewhere below, a sodium streetlight leaked weak orange up the shaft and painted the bricks with a flat, perpetual dusk. I told myself it didn't matter. I showered, ordered a sandwich, answered emails until the soft hum of the vent and the throb of the mini-fridge braided into something like quiet. Around 11, I turned off the lamp, left the bathroom light cracked for company, and stretched across the bed. Out of the corner of my eye, a shadow slid up the bricks. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't my silhouette. I was still. It had weight and a shoulder shape to it, the suggestion of hips, as if someone were easing along the wall, chest to brick, inching sidewise up the narrow slit between buildings. It reached the top edge of the glass and stuck there like a smear of smoke. I turned my head. It stopped clean, absolute like a cut in film. Just brick, mortar lines. The draft cool on my cheek. I stared for a minute or two, felt stupid, looked back at my phone. A beat later, the shadow moved again. Lower now, drifting past the window's center like a fish through weeds. I snapped the lamp back on. The bricks became flat and honest. The movement was gone. When I turned the lamp off, the shape was back, imprinting itself on the cane sugar light from below. Traffic, I said out loud, as if the room needed the lie. People walking past the alley opening. But there was no opening. Earlier, I checked the hotel's exterior on my walk back from dinner. This side of the building backed up to another tower with a narrow ventilation shaft between. No sidewalk, no alley, just a vertical slit where rain went to forget. I angled the desk chair to face the window and sat down. I told myself I'd watch until it didn't happen again, and then sleep would be a reasonable request. The brick wall breathed its cold breath. I watched. Nothing. The longer I looked, the more still it stayed, as if my eyes were fingers pinning something. My gaze drifted to the corner of the window frame, just an inch, and the shadow moved quick, guilty, then froze when my focus snapped back. A children's game, only the other kid was through glass and mortar. I tried a test. I angled the black screen of the TV so it reflected the window. In the reflection, I kept my eyes down, watching the dark rectangle sideways while I pretended to steady my phone. There it was, a silhouette, long and flat, sliding across the bricks with a patience that made my teeth ache. When I raised my head to look, it stopped so cleanly the afterimage hurt. I called the front desk because I wanted someone to say the word duct or maintenance, like a spell. My room faces an interior wall, I said. There's movement. Is there access in that shaft? There shouldn't be, the clerk said. I could hear the fountain pretend to be a river behind her. Those are sealed. I can send security up. It's fine, I said, which meant it wasn't. I turned off the bathroom light to let the orange from below have the room. The glass fogged a little where my breath reached it. As the condensation spread, something dragged through it, slow and deliberate. From the outside one straight line, the width of a fingertip. The line rode itself upward and stopped halfway, like a sentence forgotten. A dull panic fluttered under my breastbone, the shameful kind that feels like you've disappointed yourself. I reached for the curtains and then didn't close them. If it wanted to be seen, it could wait. Sleep wasn't happening. I propped my phone on a glass and aimed the camera at the window. The screen showed the brick wall, the weak light, the occasional grainy pixel twitch that could have been anything. I hit record, turned my face away to read, and let my peripheral vision do the work. The shadow moved when my eyes didn't. Somewhere near 2, I made the mistake of blinking too slowly. In that private dark of a long blink, a shadow slid pressed, closer than it had been, and when my eyes opened something like the suggestion of a face wrong proportions, stretched by the glass as if printed and smeared flattened against the bricks, and vanished back into suggestion. I swallowed hard and waited for the room to decide my next breath. The radiator ticked. The vent exhaled. A tiny crumble came from the gap, the sound of grit shifting. When I leaned closer, a faint dust smell filled the air. Warm and dry, a memory of sun even with no sun to have it. The phone vibrated. I jumped. The recording had stopped at 5 minutes with a polite notification. Storage full. When I thumbed it open, the last frame before it cut out held a smear across the glass I hadn't seen, a print like a palm, except too long. Dragged up, more like the heel of a hand than the fingers. I erased 3 months of photos without thinking and started recording again. The silhouette had learned me. It waited for sips, for swallows, for the minute shifts that happen when a body has to believe it isn't prey. Each time, it slid a hair closer and pinned itself when my gaze snapped. "Stop," I said to the glass. My breath fogged it. Letters opened in the fog the way they do when old grease keeps a message from misting. Look, as if someone had written from the other side ages ago, and my breath was just revealing it now. I backed away until the bed caught my knees. I didn't sleep. Dawn is supposed to make things forgivable. Around 6, the light seeping into that narrow shaft turned the bricks the color of old clay. The shapes thinned into ordinary shadows, then into nothing. I stepped close to the glass. A fine red dust lined the bottom edge of the frame, the color of the wall. I dragged a fingertip through it, and it clung to my skin like pollen. In the dust, written tiny and neat in a track only something thin could have made, were 2 words. "Don't watch," I packed. I told the clerk at checkout that maintenance might need to check the window of 703. She looked tired, said they would, handed me a folio and a receipt I don't remember signing. The world outside had sky and cars and a wind that moved big things, and I pretended that was enough. That night, back home, my bedroom faces another building normal city living, but there's more space than a foot. I slept fine until the hour where the night feels like it's nobody's. I woke and stared at the window. Street lights silvered the room. In the reflection on the dark glass, a hallway shape moved behind me. I turned, nothing. When I looked back, the reflection had stilled into my own fear. I pulled the curtains tight and lay on my side, and that's when I understood the shape had never been using the light to make itself seen. It had been using my looking to move. Every time I gave it a glance, it took a step. I've stopped checking windows in the dark. I keep the blinds open, cruel and honest, and say good morning to whatever wants to wait on the glass. If I pretend not to see, it doesn't get closer. Except sometimes, when I wake, there's a fine line of red dust on my inside sill, and a fresh track through it, neat and thin, making room for letters that haven't had time to finish writing yet. The tray slid into my room from the gap under the door, metal whispering on carpet, a smell of gravy and steam. When the dome lifted by itself, a hotel napkin stared up at me with fresh, wet ink. Don't open for the knock. I hadn't ordered anything. It was after 11 in one of those highway hotels, where the lobby fountain is the loudest thing, and the front desk clerk speaks an apology as a default. My room 415 had the usual. Stiff bedspread, a TV with a hospitality menu, a door that sat a half-inch above the carpet, like it didn't want to commit. I'd showered, left the bathroom light cracked, and was half drifting when the scrape started. It was a steady push, soft metal on plastic fibers. She. At first I thought someone was dragging something down the hall. Then the sound focused under my door, a pressure of movement in the thin rectangle of light on the carpet. A flat shape nosed through, then another. The edge of a tray appeared, impossible, tilting and flexing like it had forgotten that physics exists. The thing slid in until it cleared the door and then settled with a small, patient clink. Steam beaded the metal dome. Condensation rolled and pooled. My mouth tasted like hot fat and pepper. I reached for the phone to call the front desk and stopped when the dome rose a quarter inch. Not yanked, lifted, like someone's fingers had pinched the knob and changed their mind. Then it rose again, steady, and tipped back. Under it, on an empty white plate, lay a folded hotel napkin. Ink glistened on the top layer. Don't open for the knock. The letters were blocky, fast, the way someone writes when their whole hand is a fist. The ink caught the light in little wet beads like sweat. I picked it up, and my fingertips came away smudged faint black. It had been written seconds ago. I called the front desk anyway. The line clicked, and a woman said, "Front desk," with that practiced lightness. Someone shoved a tray into my room, I said. I tried to sound amused instead of afraid. "There's a note. We don't have room service after 10, she said, typing. "And no deliveries for 415 tonight." A beat. "Would you like me to send security?" A knock landed on my door, 3 gentle taps, and the front desk went quiet in my ear. Room service. A man's voice through the wood, soft and cheerful, not loud enough to wake the neighbors. "Open up." I stared at the napkin. "Don't open for the knock." Ink still wet. "Sir?" The clerk said in my ear, small now. "Please don't open the door." "What's the code if security arrives?" I asked, because stories like mine need codes. The clerk told me one. I repeated it out loud. From the other side of the door, the man repeated it back perfectly toned, timing, the same little breath I hadn't realized I'd taken between the words. "Security," he added, just to be polite. The handle ticked against the deadbolt with a feather's pressure. Not a rattle, a test. I set the tray against the wall and slid the desk chair under the knob. The chair legs squeaked on the carpet. The squeak made the man outside chuckle a small, patient sound, like a waiter who's been here before. The gap under the door was a sharp bar of hallway light. 2 shadows spilled into it, the toes of shoes, pointed inward. Then they withdrew, then returned lower, as if a head had stooped to peer at the seam. The bar went dark for a beat, the shape of a hand covering it, then right again. The bathroom fan clicked and whirred to a stop. The sudden quiet was thick enough to hear the building think. The door breathed back at me, a warm, faint exhale through the seal. The dome, now on the carpet, lifted again with no hand. A second napkin lay beneath, paper crinkling. The top layer glistened with new ink. Stay off the peephole. The knock came again, a patient rhythm. "Sir, security." He said the code again and hit the syllables like a prize cellist. The phone on the nightstand lit up and rang front desk on the screen. I picked up. "Security is outside your room," the clerk said. "Please confirm the code." I repeated it. From the bathroom vent, a whisper carried the last two words back to me, perfect and precise. A small breath followed, close and intimate to the metal. "Are you on the line?" I asked the clerk. She was. "Is there a camera in your hallway?" "Yes, sir." "Is someone at my door?" A long, soft pause I didn't like at all. "We're having trouble with that feed," she said. "Please do not open." Something thin slid under the door and touched the napkin. A fork. It hooked the paper and tugged. The tines bent trying to navigate the gap. The fork withdrew. The napkin stayed. "Sir," the voice through my door said, "I see you got your late plate. House says your burger's here. You'll want to eat while it's warm." My stomach turned. I hadn't ordered anything. I dragged my suitcase in front of the door. I pressed my palms to it and felt the slow seethe of my own blood. My cell buzzed with a blocked number call. I let it go to voicemail. It pinged with a text, a photo of my door from knee height, light bar bright, the feet of the chair visible under it. A silver dome reflected in the light. Under the photo, a line, "Open, please." The ink on the second napkin was dry enough to take. I turned it over. In the dented pressure of letters, pushed through from the previous words, not ink, just the ghost of writing another sentence, waited if you tilted it into the lamp. "Wait for the cart." More knocks. The handle turned so slowly, the brass didn't dare squeak. Something small and metal hunted for the swing latch. The chain ticked in its catch and held. Outside, a new sound joined a squeaky wheel rolling the length of the hallway, getting closer. The man's voice stopped knocking and stepped back. I could feel the change in the air through that half-inch of space. "Security," another voice called. Farther away this time, broader, more bored. The wheel squeaked. I imagined the hall camera feeding static to a dark office. I imagined the clerk's hand hovering over a button that made nobody faster. The cart arrived at my door and stopped. I saw it in the slit of light, the shadow of a low table, the smell of coffee and bleach. A woman's throat cleared. "Code?" I said to the door. She said the wrong one. In the bathroom vent, the whisper said the right one, almost delighted. I didn't open. The cart rolled away. The man's voice closer now to the floor side, as if disappointed we'd both failed a test. My phone went dark when I needed it not to. The room pressed in. At 211 Ame, the knocks moved, gentle as rain away from the hallway, onto something inside the room. Closet door. Tap, tap. Bathroom door. Tap. The mini fridge hummed, a nervous animal. "Please open," the vent urged in my own voice this time, lazy and dead on. "Please." I waited in a knot on the carpet until the pink of morning peeled the edges from everything. The knock stopped when the light got honest. My phone had a new voicemail from unknown. I didn't listen. I cracked the door. The hall was ordinary. A room service cart sat at the far end with no one near it. A silver dome, damp with breath, covered nothing. Under my door, on the hallway side, a single hotel napkin lay folded. Wet ink bled through. Good job. I checked out early, said nothing useful, and drove home with too many glances in the rear view. That night, around midnight, something thin padded at my apartment door. The light under it wavered, like someone's breath had leaned close. A soft scrape began, metal on wood, as if a flat round shape were trying to learn the shape of my floor. An envelope eased under, white sliding into my living room like a tongue. Inside, a napkin my city's most forgettable hotel logo stamped in one corner. Wet ink, blocky and fast. "Don't open for the knock." The TV greeted me by name and thanked me for a 5-star review I never wrote. Then it hit play on a video from the corner of my room. Me, asleep. I arrived late enough that the lobby pianist had given up pretending. The hotel was one of those tall, polite boxes that smell like citrus cleaner and warm dust. I was on the 11th floor, room 1119 end of hall, ice machine sighing to itself. I did the routine, deadbolt, swing latch, closet check, bathroom light cracked. The HVAC coughed and settled into a wet, mechanical breath. I ate peanuts from the minibar, skinned email until the words slid, and fell into a blackout sleep. Morning was gray. The only noise was a vacuum 2 floors down and the thin rattle of a cart. I turned on the TV to check the weather. The black glass woke into a wallpaper that said "Good morning," my name, with a little hotel logo waving. Beneath that, a tile flashed, cheerful as an app. Your review. 5 gold stars winked at me. I hadn't touched a keyboard. I clicked into it because denial likes evidence. Up came a guest feedback page with my full name, today's date, and a comment bubble that read, "Wonderful, so quiet. Would stay again." Attached was a thumbnail of my bed from high in a corner, one of those fisheye angles that make rooms look like dioramas. When I hovered, it autoplayed. It showed me asleep, face turned toward the wall, breath lifting the covers. Timestamp in the corner, 2:41 a.m. There was no sound, only the hum of compression. The camera was in the room. The perspective was wrong for anything else. The angle hugged the crown molding where, last night, I'd noticed a small yellowed plate and assumed speaker. Old wiring they'd never taken out. My scalp went cold. I scrubbed the timeline with the remote. At 2:52, the bathroom door in the frame moved a finger's width and closed again. At 3:03, a black shape crept into the edge of the image and then wasn't there when I blinked. At 3:11, the sheet on the far side of me smoothed itself, the way fabric does when a hand is careful not to wake someone. I told myself there was a glitch, a prank, something I could root in the world where things make sense. I hit back. The TV's home screen listed my recent reviews. Only one existed. A little green bar pulsed under it. 27 people found this helpful. My name looked too much like itself. The phrasing, so quiet, the exact way I'd written it about restaurants in other lives. It read like me. I called the front desk. The woman who answered was a voice that had managed 100 problems bigger than mine. "Front desk," she said. I told her the TV had a review from me, and it contained a video of me sleeping. "We don't use in-room cameras," she said, trained and crisp. "That would be illegal. The televisions have a guest portal for streaming." "The video is from inside this room," I said. "There's a timestamp. I can send security and engineering to check your device." "Please do." While I waited, I tried the obvious. I dug behind the TV and pulled the plug. The screen died, the room breathed, and for a second, I felt like I'd turned a face to the wall. Then the TV blinked to life again. Not full bright, but enough. A battery-powered restart? The hotel logo? I don't know. It shivered to the same home screen. My name bloomed like a friendly virus. The review tile updated itself. It now read, "Thanks for your 5 stars. My name." Below it, a sentence typed itself live in a friendly font, letter by individual letter. "Help us improve your stay." The cursor hopped to a toggle labeled Camera-Based Insights. It was already on. I navigated to it with my thumb hovering, the way you inch toward a spider with a glass. The toggle slid itself to on again if I tipped it off. Something was making choices on my behalf. 3 soft knocks came, practiced and polite. Through the peephole, the hallway smiled like a fish-eye security in a navy blazer flanked by a man in a polo with a tool bag. I wedged the chair under the knob anyway, cracked the door on the chain, and told them. Security looked at the TV like it had sworn in public. Engineering climbed up on the desk and popped the yellowed plate. Behind it, dust, dead wires, a rusted screw. No lens. He shrugged at the emptiness like it had insulted him. "Does your TV have a camera?" I asked, Not in guest rooms, security said. He didn't sound like he believed in definitions anymore. They left to check the head end. I closed the door, set the chair back, locked everything, and sat with the remote like it was a talisman. The TV responded before I pressed anything. Playback resumed. It chirped, and the video jumped to 3:17 a.m. My body still in the bed on screen. A shadow bloomed and receded across the carpet with a rhythm I recognized. Breathing. Not mine. Under the frame, a live comment counter ticked. Watching now. 1, 2, 3. I covered the TV camera out of reflex, then remembered I didn't know where that would be. The black bezel stared back without features. I grabbed the laundry bag and draped it over the set. The room felt blind and worse. My phone buzzed with a notification from the hotel app I hadn't downloaded. Thanks for your feedback. My name. We're sharing your experience to help other guests. I called the front desk again. Please take this down, I said. Delete whatever that is. It's not mine. We don't have access to guest accounts, she said. A lie or a habit. Then softer. We can move you. The TV dinged from under the bag. I pulled it back like a sheet. The screen now showed a new tile. Leave a review for tonight. 5 empty stars waited. Under them, a grayed out comment box that read start typing and filled itself. So peaceful. Would stay again. I unplugged it again. It stayed on long enough to save a draft. I replugged it and watched the stars fill gold, one by one, not from the left, but from the right, as if something were rating me. The door handle whispered against the deadbolt. A test more than a turn. I stood very still and listened. The bathroom fan clicked on by itself. The room phone lit and said front desk. I didn't pick up. Somewhere in the walls, the building shifted a long, explained groan. At checkout, I was all manners and empty hands. The manager nodded too much. We'll escalate this, he said. We take privacy very seriously. He slid a paper across the counter that had my name printed in bold at the top. Guest survey received. I drove home with the radio off and the review like a splinter under my nail. At my apartment, I threw my suitcase down and went straight to the living room. The TV there has never learned my name. It's a dumb screen I plug things into. The room smelled like the clean nothing of closed windows. I turned it on to the HDMI input and watched it wait. No hotel logo. No greeting. In the corner of the screen, a small tile blinked on anyway, gently, as if it had always belonged. Welcome back, my name. Under it, a thumbnail of my bedroom from high in a corner I'd never noticed. In the frame, the shape on the bed was me, last night's clothes in a pile on the chair, my chest lifting slow. Time stamp. Now. 5 stars slid in from the right and settled. A comment typed itself, neat and in my voice. Wonderful. So quiet. Below that, a button I didn't touch lit itself. Would stay again. The elevator didn't have a button for 404, but at 404 a.m., it opened on a floor anyway. I knew it was mine before the doors were fully apart. I'd seen that carpet for months in my dreams. I travel enough to measure my life by key sleeves and lobby smells. This hotel was a glass and brass tower that tried to be kind with lemon cleaner and soft jazz. My room was 1210. I should have slept, but lately sleep had been a place I hated. A recurring hallway I didn't recognize in daylight, with a carpet pattern that looped in interlocking chains and repeated a tiny misprint every 13th link. Stitch pulled a thread out of place. I'd wake at 4:04 every time, stomach cold, remembering the hesitation in that pattern like a skipped step. That night, close to 4, I gave up. The room was cold and private, the kind of cold that lives behind your teeth. I went to find ice because ritual is warmer than dread. The elevator hummed like a throat clearing. I pressed 12. The car climbed past 4 without pausing. At 8, it shuddered a small, thinking kind of jolt. The panel's digits flickered, then steadied on nothing at all. The car sighed and stopped. The floor indicator above the doors didn't say 8 or 12. It made a shape like a glitch. 404. The doors slid open onto a hallway that didn't exist on the map. It was half lit, the fixtures down one side humming and the others dead. The air smelled like old vacuum and concrete dust. And the carpet was the one from my dreams. Those dark red chains on a dull gold field. The 13th link in each run misprinted into a little snag, as if the loom had hesitated. My chest went weak. The ice bucket sweated in my hand. There were doors. Numbers in brass. 401, 402, 403. Where 404 should have been. A blank plate. After that, 405, 406, even though the hotel I checked into went from 3 straight to 5 on the elevator. No 4th floor on the panel. No 4th floor on the evacuation diagram in the lobby. But here it was, breathing like a pocket no one meant to sew into the building. I tapped the close button with my knuckle without taking my eyes off the carpet. The doors stayed open like a held breath. I stepped onto the misprint I'd dreamed about for months. The carpet gave in a familiar way, like stepping onto your own footprints in soft ground. It was quiet enough to hear the room settle around me. From somewhere unseen, a fan stuttered and caught. The hair on my forearms prickled the way it does in the very old parts of museums. I tried my phone. No bars. The time read 4:04 and wouldn't budge when I thumbed the screen. Halfway down the hall, the blank plate door stood not quite flush. The gap along the jamb was black and flat like a pupil. A white key sleeve lay on the carpet in front of it, half tucked under as if slid from inside. My name was on the sleeve in hotel print. Below it, in blue pen, someone had written 404. I told myself, housekeeping, maintenance, a prank. I told myself anything that would let my foot take one more step. As I reached for the handle, the elevator behind me hummed to life, reconsidered, and shut its doors with the gentlest finality I've ever heard. The sound traveled down the hall like water. I almost didn't turn around. When I did, the car was gone. The panel above the opening was blank. The door at 404 moved a fraction inward, like someone leaning on it from the other side to listen. Hello? I hate that I said it. My voice sounded like it had learned the word in a smaller room. Nothing. Just the kind of silence you get in stairwells after hours. I pressed my ear to the seam like a fool. Wood has a temperature. This was cold in a way that wasn't air. I could smell something clean and wrong hotel bleach flattened by time. From inside, a sound, not a footstep. The careful, dry hiss of paper moving under a hand. I slid the key sleeve in my pocket and glanced down. The carpet patterns on either side of the door didn't match. In my dream, they never did. The links met wrong here too, offset by a stitch, tricking you into stepping where you didn't mean to. An evacuation map hung in a frame by the ice machine at the end of the hall, a thing to cling to, a diagram that explains exits. I went to it. The little red dot said, "You are here." The floor plan said 4. The corridor bent in 2 right angles that weren't in any of the hotel's public maps. In the center, a room labeled 404 existed. A scrawl had dented the paper without ink, pressed so hard it bruised through. Welcome back. I flipped the frame open on instinct. The back smelled like cardboard and damp. Behind it, the drywall had a faint rubbed mark at shoulder height, as if someone had leaned here often, watching. Housekeeping, a voice said down the hall, not loud, casual as a shrub. It came from the direction of the elevator that wasn't open anymore. The voice had that hotel cheer dulled by midnight. As it moved closer, it began to carry a rhythm I recognized that wasn't a speech at all. A tap every 13 steps. A faint scuff on the misprinted link. I backed toward 404 without meaning to. The gap along the jamb widened a hair, and a breath of air, warmer than the hallway, slid out across my cheek. It smelled faintly, shockingly, like a shampoo in my room. The voice passed my door without a shadow. It went on soft. Housekeeping. Then closer. My name, said like you say it to someone asleep. The carpet under my shoes felt like standing on a chest. The handle at 404 nudged against my thigh, not pushed from inside, drawn from my direction. A small pull that meant you could have gone in without using your hands if you wanted to pretend you hadn't tea. I looked through the seam, and in that tiny slice, I saw darkness that wasn't total. A little wedge of room. A desk. A TV black as a mirror. The corner held a lamp with a burn mark on the shade, same shape as the one in 1210. The pattern on the carpet inside matched my rooms, not the halls. It was like someone had cut a piece out of the space upstairs and set it here. My phone in my pocket buzzed, one of those phantom vibration stress gives you. When I checked, the screen was blank, except for 404, stubborn. In the black, my reflection looked back, and behind my shoulder, a shape that could have been me in the glass if a second me wore the wrong clothes. The tap in the hallway paused at the misprinted link in front of 404. I didn't breathe. In the little black seam beside my eye came a whisper so unembellished it could have been anyone. We only show up if you've already been. I yanked away. The door eased shut as if I'd never touched it. The carpet under my feet felt like a page turning back to the right spot. The elevator opened with a chime that sounded an octave too low. The panel said 12, like it had been saying it all night. I walked to it without looking back at the blank plate. I rode up in a car that felt too bright and smelled like lemon. When I stepped into the real hallway, 1210 waited, stupid and normal. The clock on my desk read 4:05 for the first time in months. I slept with the bathroom light on and the swing latch set, and the morning made everything small and nameable again. At checkout, the clerk smiled and asked if everything was satisfactory. I said yes, because saying no would have meant an explanation that sounds too much like a confession. On the plane home, I reached for gum and found the key sleeve in my pocket. 404 in blue pen, my name in hotel print. Inside the sleeve, folded once, was a strip torn from an evacuation map. No ink on it, but if you tilted it, you could see where letters had been pressed hard without writing. They spelled CU. Now my apartment building's elevator doesn't have a 4 either. It calls it PH or M, or just leaps from 3 to 5. But twice this month, when I'm in the box alone at 404 for reasons I can't defend, it breathes, thinks, and gives me a floor between floors. The doors open on a strip of carpet that isn't ours, a chain-link pattern with a snag every 13th loop. I keep the doors from closing with my hand, and I don't step out. The pattern waits like a path I've already walked.